My brother Daniel stole my life one humid summer evening, and I let him think he'd gotten away with it. I walked into our parents' living room in Austin, expecting good news about the family business Dad had built from nothing. I'd worked there since 19, climbing every step while Daniel partied through his 20s. But there he sat, smug as ever as Dad announced, "Daniel will take over operations. He's ready." My heart cracked like glass under a boot. I'd poured my soul into that place, steady and reliable, while Daniel barely showed up. Mom nodded along, eyes shining with pride for her golden boy. Daniel smirked at me, that charming grin hiding his selfish core. "No hard feelings, Angela," he said later, clapping my shoulder like it was a joke. At 33, I'd been a responsible sibling, keeping things together, but in one meeting, he snatched my future. I forced a smile, hiding the burn inside. That night, alone in my apartment, rage boiled over. I promised myself I'd get it back, on my terms, when he least expected. Patience would be my blade. Just before you continue to watch, Feminine Revenge would like you to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage us to keep this streak of thrilling revenge stories for you to watch. Alright, back to the story. Whenever I questioned Dad's decision, Daniel twisted the story like a pro. "You're too emotional, Angela," he'd say, rolling his eyes in front of the staff. "The team respects me more. They need a leader, not a babysitter." He even spread rumors at work that I wasn't competent, whispering about mistakes I'd never made. Soon, employees who'd trusted me for years whispered behind my back, avoiding my eyes in meetings. Even my parents looked at me differently, Mom pulling me aside to say, "Let Daniel shine, dear. It's for the family." I bit my tongue, pretending to step back, but the hurt gnawed like acid. Daniel's charm worked like magic. He was the golden child, reckless but adored, while I was just steady old Angela. His gaslighting made me doubt myself at night, staring at the ceiling. Why fight when everyone believed him? But deep down, I saw the pattern. He wasn't just stealing the job, he was stealing my reputation, piece by piece, making me invisible in my own world. I logged every lie in a secret notebook, waiting. One day, he'd slip, and I'd be red. Daniel didn't stop with the company. He went after everything that made my life mine. A few months after he took over, I started dating Eric, a kind software engineer who made me laugh on our first coffee date. He was steady, like me, and for once, things felt easy. But Daniel charmed him too, inviting him to business lunches that turned into golf outings and late-night drinks. Slowly, Eric began pulling away, canceling plans with excuses about work stress. "You're too jealous of Daniel," he said one night, his voice sharp during an argument I didn't start. I stared at him, stunned. Jealous? I'd never said a word against my brother. Within months, Eric broke up with me over text, claiming we grew apart. Weeks later, a mutual friend spotted him at dinner with Daniel, laughing like old pals. The betrayal burned like acid in my chest, hot and unrelenting. How had Daniel twisted him against me? I realized then he wasn't satisfied with just my career. He wanted every part of my life, stealing my joy piece by piece, leaving me isolated in the ruins. To outsiders, Daniel painted himself as my savior, the caring brother stepping up for the family. He told neighbors I was unstable, whispering that the business pressure had gotten to me, that he was helping me transition out for my own good. His voice would drop low, eyes wide with fake concern, and people bought it hook, line, and sinker. Even at church, he'd shake hands and say, "Angela's taking some time off, bless her heart." My parents fell for it hardest, begging me to let Daniel lead for the good of the family name, their eyes pleading like I was the problem. "He's got fresh ideas, honey," Mom said over dinner, patting my hand. I smiled through it all, pretending to step back gracefully, nodding along like a good sister. "You're right," I'd say, forcing warmth into my voice. But secretly, I was taking notes, in a small journal hidden in my desk, every rumor he spread, every lie he told, every time he twisted the knife. He thought he was untouchable, but I was building my case, quiet as a shadow. I started observing Daniel quietly after he took over, watching from the shadows like a hunter in the woods. For all his charm that fooled everyone, he was reckless in ways that screamed trouble. He'd sneak off to poker nights, betting company cash like it was pocket change, coming back with empty pockets and excuses. He flirted with married women at business events, his laughs too loud, his touches too bold, risking scandals that could tank the firm. And the company funds? He treated them like his personal wallet, charging business expenses that were really weekend trips to Vegas or fancy dinners with clients who never signed deals. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I documented everything in a hidden file on my laptop. Every slip-up, every lie he told in meetings, every receipt I could snag from the trash. Dates, amounts, witnesses, I built it piece by piece. He thought he was untouchable, the golden boy on top. But I saw the cracks forming. I realized patience would be my greatest weapon, sharper than any quick fight. Let him build his castle. I'd wait for the right storm to bring it down. One Thanksgiving, Daniel turned the family dinner into a stage, giving a speech about family unity that dripped with fake warmth. He stood at the head of the table, glass raised, talking about how we'd all pull together for the business's future. Then he pulled me into a hug in front of everyone, parents, aunts, uncles, beaming like it was a Hallmark moment. "No hard feelings, sis," he whispered in my ear, his breath hot and smug. "You'll thank me one day." My parents wiped tears, thinking we'd made peace after the handover drama. Mom squeezed my hand, whispering how proud she was of us both. I played along, smiling sweetly as if the wounds from him stealing my spot were healed, hugging him back like a good sister. Inside, I felt like stone, cold, unyielding, unbreakable. The applause rang out, but my mind stayed sharp. Because forgiveness was the mask I needed to wear, hiding my plans while he let his guard down. He'd think I was beaten, harmless. But under that smile, I sharpened my edge, waiting for the perfect cut. I began subtly nudging employees who still trusted me, the ones I'd worked side by side with for years before Daniel swooped in. Little comments here and there, nothing blatant that could trace back, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. Strange how Daniel approved that expense so fast, right? Must be a new policy, I'd say innocently over coffee in the break room, watching their brows furrow. Or, during a team huddle, I'd mention offhand, "I wonder why he skipped the budget review this time." Whispers started to spread like ripples in a pond, quiet at first but growing. People who'd once cheered his fresh ideas now exchanged glances when he barked orders or vanished for long lunches. Doubt is a powerful poison. It seeps slow, invisible, until it rots the roots. Daniel strutted around, oblivious, thinking his charm held everything together. He didn't even see it seeping through his kingdom, weakening the foundation he'd stolen from me. I kept my face neutral, playing the supportive sister, but inside, satisfaction brewed. Let the questions fester. Soon, they'd bloom into something he couldn't charm away. One Friday, Daniel stumbled into the office late, reeking of alcohol like he'd bathed in whiskey. His tie was crooked, eyes bloodshot, and he muttered excuses about traffic while clients waited in the conference room, tapping feet and checking watches. They were furious, their deal hanging by a thread. I stepped in without a word, handling the meeting like old times, smoothing egos, crunching numbers, sealing the pitch with the steady hand they'd trusted for years. Daniel sulked in his office the whole time, door cracked just enough to hear the applause when it wrapped. The clients thanked me personally afterward, shaking my hand firmly. "You're a lifesaver, Angela," one said, but I caught the unease in their eyes when they mentioned Daniel's absence. His golden boy image had its first crack, visible now like a flaw in polished glass. Word spread through the office by lunch, whispers about his reliability, his off days. He blamed a headache when he emerged, but I saw the worry flicker in his smirk. The empire he'd stolen was starting to wobble, and I hadn't lifted a finger. Yet. One of Daniel's conquests turned out to be the wife of a wealthy investor named Paul Grant, a big player who'd pumped thousands into our family business. I'd seen the signs at a company event, Daniel leaning too close, her giggles too loud, his hand lingering on her arm. Rumors surfaced weeks later. whispered in elevators and over water coolers. I knew exactly how to fan the flames without getting burned. At a networking dinner downtown, I sat near Paul's assistant, chatting casually about office drama and dropping a hint. Heard some wild stories about late-night meetings. Hope it's not true. Nothing direct, just enough to spark curiosity. She must have told Paul because within a week, he pulled out his funding, citing personal conflicts. The business reeled, losing a key deal overnight. Daniel raged in his office, slamming doors, but he had no clue it traced back to me. He blamed bad luck publicly, but in private, his eyes narrowed at everyone, paranoia creeping in. He blamed me in a heated call, accusing me of jealousy, but he had no proof, just his gut, twisting like a bad bet gone wrong. My parents called me one evening, their voices thick with tears over the speakerphone. "Angela, we need to talk," Dad said, his tone heavy like lead. They explained Daniel had confessed everything, or his version of it. "He says you're sabotaging him, spreading rumors, turning people against him," Mom added, her words breaking. "Please stop this. For the family's sake." I sat frozen on my couch, the phone hot against my ear. For a moment, I felt crushed, like a building collapsing inward. How could they still believe him over me, after all I'd given? I'd been the one holding things together, yet here they were, begging me to back off like I was the villain. But as their pleas dragged on, anger shifted to clarity. Daniel's confession reeked of desperation, a cornered animal lashing out. He'd spun this tale to save face, but in doing so, he'd shown his hand. And desperation always leaves evidence, sloppy lies, frantic moves that beg to be traced. I promised them I'd think about it, my voice calm as a still pond. Inside, plans sharpened. His fear was my opening. I began carefully planting documents when Daniel's arrogance peaked, thinking no one would check his tracks. Duplicate receipts for business trips that matched his poker losses, altered logs showing funds shuffled to personal accounts, a few forgotten, emails in shared inboxes hinting at shady deals. I slipped them in quietly, a file here, a digital trail there, nothing flashy, just enough to look like his own sloppy work. To anyone skimming, it seemed like honest mistakes from an overworked CEO. But to anyone digging deeper, it screamed fraud, embezzlement, the kind that could sink a company. Daniel was too busy strutting around, charming clients and barking orders, to notice the web tightening around him. He'd glance at reports with a wave, trusting his golden touch kept everything shiny. I kept my face neutral, playing the helpful ex-employee dropping by with advice. His empire was becoming a ticking time bomb, fuses lit by his own ego. One wrong move, and it'd explode in his face. I waited in the shadows, heart steady, knowing the blast would echo far. When Daniel's mistakes started catching attention, late payments to vendors, odd budget gaps, I pretended to defend him like a loyal sister should. "He's under pressure. Give him time," I'd say in meetings, my voice soft and sincere. People believed me, nodding with sympathy, thinking I was the gracious one who'd stepped aside for family. "Angela's so supportive," they'd whisper, patting my back. In truth, I was making sure when the fall came, no one could accuse me of pushing him. My hands stayed clean, my words kind. But every defense planted more doubt. If even I had to explain his slips, maybe he wasn't the leader they thought. Daniel lapped it up, thanking me with a smug grin, clueless that I was propping him higher just to watch the drop. The higher he climbed, the harder he'd fall, tumbling from his stolen throne. I smiled through it all, filing away more evidence, my patience a steel trap. Let the whispers grow. Soon they'd roar. His kingdom teetered, and I held the final nudge, waiting for that sweet, shattering moment. Daniel decided to expand the company recklessly into a new market, announcing it at a board meeting like he was unveiling the next big thing. He promised investors a massive return, double digits in months, painting pictures of growth that sounded too good to be true. I sat quietly in the back, notebook in hand, as he waved charts with inflated projections, numbers pulled from thin air. I'd crunched the real data weeks before, The risks outweighed any gains, but he ignored my quiet warnings, calling them pessimistic. The board cheered his vision, but I saw the house of cards wobbling. I quietly kept records of every exaggerated claim. Emails to investors, meeting minutes, even his boastful social media posts hyping the deal. Screenshots, timestamps, all tucked away in my growing file. He thought he was a genius, betting the farm on shaky ground. All I had to do was wait for him to hang himself with his own rope, that reckless ambition tying the noose tighter with each lie. When the market shifted as I knew it would, his promises would snap like brittle twigs. At a fancy gala downtown, Daniel boasted about his success to the mayor's office, cornering a group of officials with his charm dialed up to 11. He hinted at political connections, dropping names like confetti. "We've got big plans aligning with city projects," he said, winking like he owned the room. I lingered nearby, sipping wine, making sure the right journalist overheard from the next table. I'd tipped her off earlier with a casual chat about industry buzz. Nothing traceable. She jotted notes discreetly, her eyes lighting up at his bluster. Within days, there was a headline in the local paper questioning Daniel's ethics. Words like overpromising and potential conflicts splashed across the front. Investors called nonstop, their phones buzzing like angry bees in his pocket. He paced his office, face red, blaming fake news in frantic emails. His perfect image was now under public scrutiny, cracks spreading like spiderwebs on glass. The mayor's office distanced themselves, and whispers turned to shouts. He never suspected my hand in it, just another bad break. But I watched from afar, patient as ever, the dominoes tipping one by one. My parents, once blind to Daniel's flaws, started noticing the cracks in his perfect facade as the months dragged on. The late-night calls from angry vendors, the missed meetings where he'd show up flustered and unprepared, his irritable mood snapping at everyone like a cornered dog. They couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, they pulled me aside after dinner, worry etched deep in their faces like lines on an old map. "Angela, something's off with Daniel," Dad said, his voice low. "He's not himself. The business is suffering." Mom nodded, twisting her napkin. "We thought he was ready, but maybe we were wrong." I kept my tone soft, playing the concerned sister. "Maybe he's just stressed. Running things is tough." But inside, triumph flickered like a hidden flame. They began asking questions they should have asked years ago about budgets, about his expenses, about why clients were pulling away. For the first time, their eyes turned skeptical toward him, not me. The golden boy shine was wearing off, tarnished by his own hands. Let them see the truth I'd known all along. It was just the beginning of his unraveling. In a heated moment during a board meeting, Daniel finally slipped in front of everyone who mattered. The room was tense, investors grilling him on falling profits and that botched expansion deal. He paced like a trapped animal, sweat beading on his forehead, then exploded. "Someone's ruining everything, spreading lies, sabotaging me." His finger jabbed toward me across the table, eyes wild with paranoia. The board members froze, exchanging glances, not at me, but at him. They saw not a leader commanding respect, but a paranoid man unraveling like a cheap sweater, threads pulling loose one by one. Whispers rippled through the room as he ranted on, his voice cracking. I didn't need to speak, didn't defend myself or deny it. His meltdown spoke louder than anything I could say, painting him as unstable, unfit. Chairs shifted uncomfortably as the meeting wrapped early, his authority crumbling in real time. Afterward, a board member pulled me aside, murmuring about concerns. The board began considering other options, their trust in him shattered. Let him dig his grave deeper. I'd wait in the wings, ready to step forward when the dust settled. By now, my file on Daniel was thick as a phone book, stuffed with evidence of his every misstep. Embezzlement disguised as bonuses, affairs with client spouses that could spark lawsuits, lies in investor reports that screamed fraud, reckless spending on luxury cars, and trips billed to the company. I'd gathered it all quietly, screenshots of emails, copied receipts, witness statements from disgruntled staff. I didn't send it to anyone, didn't wave it like a flag. No, I tucked it away in a locked drawer at home, letting it grow like a storm cloud on the horizon. Power is stronger when it's silent and waiting, building pressure until it bursts. Daniel paraded around, still the king in his mind, but I knew the weight of that file could crush him. One leak, one tip to the right ear, and his world would crumble. The day would come when I'd unleash it, time just right to hit hardest. And that day was closer than he realized, creeping up while he laughed off his minor hiccups. Let him ignore the thunder. The lightning was mine to command. Daniel's desperation grew like weeds in cracked concrete, choking out his old arrogance. One night, he showed up at my door unannounced, tie loosened, eyes wild like a gambler down to his last chip. "Angela, I need your help to fix things," he begged, his voice cracking for the first time I could remember. "The investors are breathing down my neck, the expansion's tanking." He admitted he couldn't handle it all, that the pressure was too much, words he'd never uttered before. I smiled, pretending sympathy, nodding along as he paced my living room. "Of course, I'll see what I can do," I said, pouring him coffee like the helpful sister. Inside, I tasted victory, sharp and sweet as forbidden fruit. His fear was delicious, the golden boy reduced to pleading with a sibling he'd shoved aside. He thought I was his lifeline, clueless that I'd woven the noose myself. Because the trap was already closing, spring set from his own mistakes, ready to snap shut. Let him cling to hope. I'd pull the lever when the moment gleamed perfect. Investors demanded an independent audit after the headlines hit, their emails flooding in like a storm surge, questioning every number Daniel had thrown around. He panicked, pacing his office like a trapped rat, barking at staff to fix this mess. That night, he called me at 2 a.m., voice shaking like a leaf in wind. "Angela, you have to help. I don't know what to do," he begged, admitting the expansion was crumbling, that he'd fudged reports to look good. "Please, sis, for old time's sake." I listened quietly, pretending concern, murmuring, "I'll see what I can do." But I didn't lift a finger, didn't touch a single file, or whisper a tip. Why should I? He'd built this house of cards himself, stacking lies higher with each boast. The audit would reveal everything, the padded expenses, the hidden losses, the creative accounting that screamed fraud. Let the experts peel back the layers. I'd supplied the rot underneath. His desperation was music, a symphony of his own making. As I hung up, satisfaction settled like warm coffee on a cold morning. The end was near, and he'd walk right into it. The audit exposed massive mismanagement and suspicious expenses like a floodlight on a dark alley, laying bare every shortcut Daniel had taken. Overnight, he went from CEO to liability. Investors withdrew in droves, the board convened emergency meetings, and even loyal staff jumped ship. Daniel screamed at me over the phone. "You set me up? This is your doing." His voice cracked with rage, accusations flying like wild punches. He was right, of course. I'd planted the seeds, watered the doubts, waited for his ego to do the rest. But I denied it coolly. "Daniel, you did this to yourself." No proof linked back to me. My hands stayed clean as fresh snow. The board voted him out unanimously, his golden throne yanked away in a single vote. My parents sat in stunned silence during the family call, their faces pale as they absorbed the reports. Daniel ranted about conspiracies, but no one bought it anymore. His empire crumbled, dust settling on the ruins he'd built on my stolen foundation. He thought he'd won forever. Now he tasted loss, bitter and final. The board asked me to step in temporarily after Daniel's ousting, their faces a mix of relief and desperation in the sterile conference room. "Just until we find a permanent replacement," they said, but I pretended to hesitate, rubbing my chin like I needed convincing. "If it's for the company, I'll help," I replied, my voice steady as always. As I dove back in, clients who'd fled under Daniel's chaos returned, shaking my hand with genuine smiles. "It feels steady again," one said, echoing what employees whispered in the halls. They rallied around me. Memos flowed smoother, deals closed faster. Morale lifted like fog burning off a morning lake. For the first time in years, the place hummed with purpose, not panic. My parents watched from afar, their calls turning from pleas for Daniel to quiet pride in me. I rebuilt systems he'd broken, patched the holes he dug. But as profits climbed and trust returned, I saw it clear. I wasn't just rebuilding the company. I was rebuilding my stolen life, brick by careful brick, stronger than before. Daniel moved into a smaller apartment after selling his house in a fire sale, the kind where buyers haggle like sharks over scraps. Friends stopped calling, their texts drying up like a forgotten well. His charm couldn't hide the scandals anymore. Women who'd chased him before now ghosted his messages, and investors blacklisted him, doors slamming shut across Austin. He tried to start his own company, pitching wild ideas to anyone who'd listen, but no one trusted him. Whispers of his failures preceded him like a bad smell. His downfall wasn't loud anymore. No dramatic crashes or public meltdowns, just a slow fade into irrelevance. He spent nights alone, scrolling through old photos of his glory days, the golden boy reduced to a shadow in a cramped rental. I heard through the grapevine he even applied for jobs at firms he'd once mocked. Loneliness wrapped around him like a cold blanket, the kind that chills to the bone. And loneliness was the revenge he never saw coming, silent and suffocating, far crueler than any quick strike. One evening, Daniel showed up at my door unannounced, unshaven like he'd forgotten what a razor was, his eyes bloodshot and hollow from too many sleepless nights chasing lost deals. He looked like a ghost of the golden boy he'd been, tie askew, hands trembling as he begged for money, for a fresh chance, for mercy like I owed him the world. "Angela, please, I've lost everything. Help me start over," he pleaded, his voice cracking like thin ice under weight. I stood in the doorway, silent as stone, remembering every stolen moment. The business handover, the whispers that shattered my reputation, the way he'd twisted Eric against me. His charm had evaporated, leaving just a desperate man grasping at scraps. "I already gave you enough of my life," I said calmly, my words flat and final, no anger, just truth. His face crumpled, mouth opening for another plea, but I didn't wait. I closed the door softly, the click echoing like a period at the end of a sentence. And I closed the door on him forever, his knocks fading as I walked away, heart steady. Months later, after the dust settled from the audit and Daniel's ousting, I was officially named CEO in a board meeting that felt like vindication wrapped in paperwork. The company thrived under my leadership. Profits climbed steadily, clients returned in waves, and employees buzzed with energy they hadn't felt in years. I rebuilt what he'd broken, streamlining operations, sealing deals with the steady hand they'd forgotten under his chaos. My parents, once blind to his flaws, called me weakly now, their voices warm with regret-tinged pride. "We're so proud of you, Angela," Mom said over coffee one afternoon, her eyes misty. "We should have seen it sooner." Dad nodded, squeezing my hand. I smiled back, not out of pure joy, but out of quiet triumph that burned sweet and slow. Because revenge wasn't just sweet, it was poetic, a slow verse where the thief becomes the beggar and the overlooked becomes the leader. Let him wallow in his small apartment. I'd turned his ruins into my empire, stronger and brighter than before. Looking back, I realized my revenge wasn't in one grand act that exploded like fireworks. It was in the patience, the quiet waiting like a spider in its web. In the silence where I watched Daniel's empire crumble, brick by stolen brick, while I rebuilt my own from the ashes he'd left. He stole my life, snatching the business, my reputation, even twisting Eric away like a thief in the night. But I took it back piece by piece, planting doubts like seeds in fertile soil, letting his own arrogance water them until they grew into choking vines. Now, as CEO, I led with the steady hand he'd mocked, turning his failures into my successes. My parents saw the truth at last, their pride in me a quiet balm. Daniel, alone in his dim apartment, had nothing left to steal. No charm could buy back trust, no smirk could hide his emptiness. And when the moment was perfect, after years of his unchecked greed, I struck, not with rage that burns out fast, but with precision like a surgeon's blade, cutting away his illusions until only reality remained. He thought he'd won forever. Instead, he lost everything to the sister he underestimated. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Feminine Revenge has got more thrilling stories for you.